Hello and welcome to Leadcast, our leadership series under the Soundbox initiative. My name is Brian Tellis and I am your host. In each episode, we sit down with a leader from the Aditya Birla Group for a conversation about the group and its businesses, and also to find out what the future holds for us as an organization. In today's episode, we will be speaking with Rohit Pathak, an IIM alumni who has been with the group since 2011. Rohit joined the Aditya Birla Group as principal EA to the chairman, Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla. He is the recipient of the Chairman's Award for Exceptional Contribution in 2015. Currently, Rohit is the CEO of Birla Copper, the copper business of the Hindalco Industries Limited, a flagship company of the Aditya Birla Group. He has had a truly inspiring journey. Thank you so much, Rohit, for joining us today on this chat. I'm sure a whole lot of people, starting with me, are going to be seriously well educated on who the gentleman is and the incredible difference that you continue to make to our lives. Now, Rohit, as a leader who's driven transformation at Birla Copper and indeed beyond, I mean, you've often talked about the importance of evolving the CEO role. Now, in your view, Rohit, what does it take to lead in today's, should I say, complex, ever-changing business environment? And importantly, how has your leadership philosophy evolved over the years?
Always a pleasure to be with you, Brian, and look forward to sharing some of my thoughts. I have had a very non-traditional journey so far into this role. I was an advisor for the first 15 years of my working life with McKinsey and then with Mr. Birla in the chairman's office. And then suddenly moved into an operating P&L role, heading the insulator business for the group. And it was a big transition. I think the only two skills that I took into the role, which I think made Mr. Birla and the leadership feel okay for giving that role to me, was one, good strategic thinking, which at least McKinsey had drilled enough into our DNA. And second one was my people skills. I had no clue of the industry. I had no clue of the manufacturing process. It was all very new to me. So I think it was a very interesting phase of my journey and a pivotal point in how I evolved as a leader. I consciously had taken on that role because I thought it's something which will help me learn at probably a little lower stake for the group because it is a small business. So if I did go wrong, it's not a big hit on the group, and I would sort of evolve as a leader. I think three things which in this journey I have learned. In my first phase at Insulators, a lot of my learning was inside out because I wanted to learn how manufacturing happens, how to do labor negotiations for the LTS, business development, the whole thing, right? So I think it was a lot of inside out type of learning where I spent time on the shop floor, in the front line to understand the business and see how things happen. And slowly, as I've moved into this current role of heading the copper business, which is much larger and of a bigger scale, I have learned to now evolve from an inside out to an outside in approach because this business is so large, there is no way I can learn everything inside out. So one of the key journeys for me has been, can I add value to the decision making and how the business performs by having an outside in view of the business, right? By asking the right questions, by knowing where to go deep in, and at the same time not micromanage too many things because that's just not feasible. So I think that is one, going from inside out to outside in. The second one is, I think, moving from a guiding type role, which I started doing in my previous stint, to a lot more coaching type style, which I am trying to do now, where I hardly take any decisions today. My large part of my role is to help that my team is able to make the right decisions, right? So I think that consciously I have started doing, and hence, it's something which has helped me a lot, but I think is also helping the team grow and handle the wide array. So I'm quite okay saying I don't want to be in every discussion or decision. You guys take it. This is how I would think if I was you. right? And that's sort of the style which I've sort of moved towards in the last few years. The third one, which I think is still a journey, it will always remain a journey, is my last CEO role was more of a leader role, where I was trying to lead the business. In this role, I am trying to change my style to inspiring people versus leading, right? So I think to me, the journey is doing to leading to inspiring. And I think I'm trying to make the switch from leading to inspiring in this role.
That's a really interesting definition, really, of your journey thus far. And I'm going to dwell on a couple of those points later. But for now, I can't help but remind you of an article where you advocated the rethinking. I found it very intriguing, of the E in the CEO, qualities. I mean, qualities like, for instance, engaging, enabling, which you just spoke about, and empathizing, which is so critical. I mean, can you share specific instances where embodying these three traits have significantly impacted your leadership approach?
No, sure. I think this is something which I believe very strongly in, because I feel what you call a role defines a lot of how you operate in that role. And the chief executive officer role, by definition, implies that you are taking all the decisions. You are an executive who's doing or executing things. And I feel that role needs to be different, especially in today's time. And hence, I thought these three E's of engaging, enabling, and empowering is sort of the key way to think of this role. To me, the first situation where I put this to test was when I moved into the insulators role. It's a very old manual manufacturing type of a business, where we had two plants, both of them having 1,500 to 2,000 employees, a large part of them permanent, some part contract. And when I took on the role, the long-term settlements of both the units were coming in about a year away from when I took over. And generally in that industry, LTS, and one was in Calcutta, so you can imagine how things were. There were 6 unions there, and the business was not going through a great time. So it was a tough phase for the business. And I was wondering, how to go about this and what is the right approach. And I also wanted to try out different ways of leadership, because this was my first role. And I said, look, leave the LTS aside. It'll come about a year down the line. But I spent a lot of time just spending on the shop floor, working with and looking at what the workers are doing, engaging and interacting with them directly. And I just found the response fantastic. We made small things of things. Okay, can we improve the working conditions in a systematic way? Can we, we ensured that, look, at work, all of us should be treated equally. So when it comes to food, water, all of us, get the same thing, right? We have the same kitchen, we have the same place. We all, as a leadership and management, said, okay, we will go to this contractor canteen, which is typically the most ignored, and start eating food there, right? So to ensure that food quality comes up. And I think, just empathizing with the tough work that they do. And to my surprise, when we went in for the long-term settlement, it was hardly a negotiation. It was more engaging conversation we had on saying, look, this is the business situation. How do we come out of this together, right? And we took some tough calls. It was probably, from a worker perspective, not a great LTS to sign on, but it went through smoothly. The first time in the history of Rishra, we had a peaceful settlement with no protest, with everyone acknowledged that, look, it's a tough one, but it's important, and we went ahead. And that showed me that, look, if you empathize with the people, listen to them, have a direct channel open to them, they are willing to listen and do what they think is right for the business, right? And I think that to me was a big eye-opener and strengthened my faith in a different way of leadership. The second one, I would say, is, if I look at my role in Copper now, I have tried this enabling and empowering type of a style. And I think it's working quite well. The business has probably done the best it has ever done in its history. We are growing, and the team is feeling overall excited. And like my team says, the pressure of the trust I put in them is higher than the pressure of trying to be a bossy leader that I could have put. So I think to me, it's a positive pressure that this style creates, and I'm enjoying it.
That's wonderful. Just listening to you, Rohit, I feel that you've empowered everyone in the team, and very importantly, by doing what you've just spoken about, you've given them a sense of ownership of the road ahead, and that's incredible. Speaking of which, I mean, growing up in the family you have, a military family, okay, with both your father and grandfather serving as generals none less, how have the military principles kind of influenced your leadership style in the corporate world? Two different, how should I say, areas, so to speak, of humankind, if I might. So, how have you really, used the principles that your lineage has empowered you with to your current...
By the way, I'm not just born and grew up in a military family, but I also married into a military family. My wife's wife comes from 4 generations of military, which is, it's itself a big legacy. I think the first principle which I observed, which I think is something which I've taken very strongly in, is just being with the front line. Right? They are the ones who are actually doing the work. And the bond that I saw in my father or my grandfather with the frontline soldier was fantastic, right? They would reach out, if they were visiting a town where dad was posted, they would come and say, even if they were retired, that relationships that they built is something which is like just fantastic, right? And I think that's something which I felt is, look, everyone is doing an important work. Just because of the way we have structured our hierarchy doesn't mean that they are any different or less important. And I think that connect of and respect for the front line is something that I picked on from that. Second is, one of the things which I realized, and that links up to the previous question you asked of enabling and empowering, is, look, finally, the front line has to take decisions. So you have to be able to create an environment where they are able to take the decision basis some basic values and guiding principles that you lay out. Right? If you are in an encounter or if you are in a war, you cannot always wait for orders from the head office. You may not even have those links up and running, in that zone. So you're there and you have to take a call. So how you help people understand your way of thinking, the guiding principles for whatever journey the business is on is very important. And I think how do you do that over in the peacetime, like they say, right, is what is important. So I think when things are going good, instead of being complacent, how do you use that time to create a common sense of purpose and common sense of value for your teams is, I think, the second part. The third one, is an interesting conversation which I had with one of Dad's friends. He was a general that time, a corps commander, and we had gone to him for a short 2-3 day break. And I was sitting for lunch at 1, and uncle came back in at 1. And I was surprised to see him because normally in army, by that time, people, officers had all started working a bit late and they would come in at 2 or 2:30. So I asked him, Uncle, aap to bade jaldi ghar aa gaye. What's not much work? So he gave a very interesting answer. He said, look, Rohit, I am the corps commander. My job is to take decisions. So I am the last to go to office and the first to come back, because only after that others will move. So I need to create that space for the others to work only as much as they need to and not because I'm sitting there in office. Second, he said, look, my job is to take decisions. So the most important role for me is to keep my mind clutter-free, to be able to take the decision when I have to take a decision, because those decisions are not the easy ones to take. And if I have too much going on in my mind, I will not be able to take an effective decision. So I have my chief of staff who does the administrative work for me, and I keep my mind free for taking the big decisions. And I think to me that notion of saying, can you keep your mind clutter free, is something which has stuck with me all these years. This was, I think, 23 years ago when I had this conversation, but it still is very vivid in my imagination, and something that has subtly influenced how I work.
That's really interesting you say that, because as the chief executive officer, you are obviously responsible for the entire organization
Yes.
and how it performs. And yet, you so pertinently say, Rohit, that you've got to keep your mind clutter free. So how do you draw the balance between knowing enough, being knowledgeable enough, to lead from the front, so to speak, and yet keep your mind clutter free? Now, you've emphasized the point thus far, the importance of making oneself redundant in a manner of speak to foster team growth. I mean, can you elaborate, on this philosophy? And of course, what always helps is if you could share an example or two on how you've implemented it in your leadership roles.
So, I remember when I joined the insulator business, and in one of my first town halls, when I was addressing the team, I made this statement. I said, look, if you really want to grow, try and make yourself redundant in your role. And, I heard a lot of whispers later on that people thought I was trying to hint at people who have been around for a long time to fire them or ask them to go, which is not the intent. I think to me the thing is, if you the only way to grow is if you are able to raise your level of performance to the next level. And you're not going to do that by trying to do the job one level below. And I see a lot of people, managers, who as they grow, they try and do the job of their subordinates, right? And then hence micromanaging, because you know it better, right? So let's say if I'm a strong procurement guy, my negotiation skills may be better than my team. And hence, every time a negotiation comes to me, I can add that extra value to that negotiation. But am I doing the right thing for the organization by doing that, right? Because then the next in line will never become better than me. So my role, when I become, let's say, the functional head, is to step back and let my team take those decisions. And even if some of them are not perfect, as I would see it, to encourage them to keep improving, right, versus doing it for them. And hence, I sort of tried to follow this 100-80-60 rule, which is in the first year in a role, whenever you take on, give 100% to that role. In the second year, do 80% in that role. And in the third year, do 60% in that role. And use the balance time to do things which your boss is doing. So, instead of trying to do your subordinates' work, can you start doing your boss's work? So, let's say in my current role, I start looking and spend a lot of time thinking, if I was in Satish's shoes, how would I think from Hindalco perspective of what copper needs to do? Right? And I spend a lot of time thinking and looking at things from that perspective. And hence that automatically makes me get a lot more wider perspective and helps me grow, and hence creates a room for the team to also grow. So, in analogy, look, this is an expansive way of leadership where you're trying to create opportunities to grow, right? Like the universe, you're expanding, and instead of trying to compress, you're trying to create that different DNA in the organization.
This whole system kind of negates this whole wanting to dominate kind of thing. And like you said, you create a universe that grows happily and grows as a team.
Yes. And think of it from another perspective, Brian. A lot of people try and tell you why they are indispensable in the role they're doing because they want to hold on to that role. But now if I am the manager of that person, and if you've created this impression that you are indispensable, why would I ever give you growth? I would always want to keep you there because you have given me the impression that without you, the thing will collapse. So yeah, I may do a few things to give you an increment or a out-of-turn promotion, but I would want you to be there because without you, I'm not sure whether things will work, right? So you're actually locking yourself in if you don't make yourself redundant in a role.